definitely a different feel, but welcome to the Absolute Podcast.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming on. Robert Feltus, everybody. He is the author of this book. I hope the camera can see this. The Last Deer Hunter. I thoroughly enjoyed it. A lot of information. My favorite thing that you said, and I actually had a conversation with an old teacher the other day, is if all information was told through a story, it would always be remembered. I think you
exactly,
said,
yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed that saying, and I was like, that makes so much more sense. And then Jacob will be talking about some things. I'm like, Robert talked about that.
Yeah.
Robert mentioned something about that.
Yeah. I got a question. The first question is, did you get your deer this year?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, did you doe or doe tag?
I
Or
never shot a doe.
No?
I got a very large buck with wonky antlers. So I would rather have the meat in the freezer than the antlers on the wall.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in that. I've always scouted before and tried to get the most mature deer for sure. But once you see a nice little buck come in, it's definitely difficult to...
It's tempting.
But
especially
I
when
love
you're cold.
Yeah. Or I've been putting a lot of time into not seeing anything, and you can't take the chance sometimes of not shooting it, you know what I mean? Especially where I'm so busy and people are busy today and stuff. So, but
well, when you read my book, I'll reiterate this now, I guess. You mentioned about scouting before the season.
Yeah.
The most important scout is after the season.
Okay.
Because the deer change their pattern as soon as the season starts. So, and they change the pattern significantly. So if you scout after the season, especially once the snow is on, then you'll know where they're going to go after the shooting starts.
Okay. Interesting. Yes, yeah, that's something I didn't know.
Yeah. So when you mentioned, I texted you and you said, wait till deer season's over. Did you already have your deer?
Yeah, I got my deer the second Saturday.
Nice.
Okay.
But I still spend time in the
Yeah,
woods.
I thought. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you said that. Like you'll be out in the woods every day. Just
Yeah, I'm going to go out again tomorrow.
Yeah. So have you hunted your whole life? Like, where
Pretty
did this
much.
all start? Like the passion you have
Well,
for it?
the reason that I hunt now is for the meat. I have a wife, 3 daughters, 8 grandchildren, and they all enjoy the meat. And the opposite isn't good. I know people that hunt and their wife and the children won't eat it, and they've got a problem. So I hunt for the meat, but I've always hunted. I've always been part of that culture, and I got my hunter safety course in 1964. So
That's awesome.
and I hunted before that. I used to go with my father to the woods.
So has there been any drastic changes over the years you find in whitetail, like since those days? Like, I don't know personally because my father was his first generation hunt. Like, none of his generation before that hunted, and he wasn't totally absolutely serious about it. He just kind of was the same thing. Like, it was nice to have the meat in the freezer kind of thing, but he was so busy he didn't have time to put it all into it. But from when you started to now in New Brunswick, has like the whitetail population and all that drastically changed?
Well, the population has fluctuated, but more than fluctuating in total, it's fluctuated in terms of where the deer are.
Okay.
So it's been said that animals of prey strike a balance between the risk of being eaten and the risk of not eating.
Yeah.
So in Quispamsis and Rossay and Darling's Island, the deer are, they're a menace. And I go to visit my daughter in Quispam, and I park the car. There's a deer lying on the grass right next to the driveway. I get out, shut the door, talk to the deer, it doesn't even get up. So they know that the risk of getting eaten there is
low.
extremely low. So where I live, the deer know that they're safe.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of deer around where I live, and I see them every day. And we'll open up the garage door, walk out, and they'll be feeding on the back lawn, and they just kind of look at us.
Yeah.
So sometimes they get a bit nervous and they'll go, but they're not as tame at my place as they are in the suburbs. But, you know, you go 5 miles away or 10 miles away and go into the woods, those bucks are very wary.
Yeah.
So they know what the risk is whatever place it is that they're in.
True. Yeah, I've never really thought of that. Yeah, I definitely knew that, like, the places like Quispam and stuff are definitely higher populated with deer.
Yeah.
You can get nuisance tags for there now. So.
There in Darling's Island, and I think on Grand Banana as well.
Yeah, which is crazy that they've, like, come so accustomed to being comfortable that close, you know?
Well, St. Andrews is the same thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy there.
I couldn't imagine. I know that they get comfortable with us around in the woods. Like, if we get the tractor going, they're so comfortable around the tractor. But if it was a different tractor or my four-wheeler, it's completely different. Like, I don't know if it's the slow moving of the tractor or what it is, but it seems like you could just drive right past them. But if it was anything different,
there's certain vehicles that don't seem to bother them.
Yeah. It's kind of odd, I guess.
Yeah.
Is it because it's like one subtle noise?
It could be
constantly coming at them. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
When did you start like getting really curious on like deer behavior? So when you really wanted to know how they work and how they act, and really curious on their lifestyle, I guess.
Probably early on, and probably through a lot of frustration, because I wasn't a successful hunter for the first probably 10 years I hunted. And I went through a lot of frustration. I saw a lot of tails. I went for a period I didn't see anything, and then I started seeing tails, and then I started getting deer. So I learned gradually what the deer do and why they do it, and I also learned the patience, I guess, to be able to wait them out or to be stealthy, to walk up on them.
Any tricks to walking up? I've heard that like a buck will almost take a few steps and stop and look, and then you should almost mimic that. So take those few steps, stop, look, like be comfortable, be still, take those extra few steps. Do you think that's actually something that would work in the field?
Absolutely. The old timers called that the 3-step, which means you take 2 steps, then 4 steps, and you average 3. But I've hunted with guys that do that with kind of like military precision. 3 steps, look this way, 3 steps, look this way. And the deer are going to notice that. But if you flow, and you take a step and look, no quick movements, and take another 2 or 3 steps and look, and no movements. I mean, I've walked with the deer in the woods. I mean, I haven't done that a lot, but I was right in among them a couple of times, and they were putting their head down and eating and bringing their head up, and I was just mimicking their pattern, and they didn't seem to bother that I was there. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, as I was reading this book, I had a dog business at the time, and through his property actually, I would take the dogs and walk through the woods, and McGregor Brook, you know where that is, so that's flooded with some awesome deer, and I'd always try to like do the 3 steps, but I have a dog, so you know it's kind of impossible, and they're like wanting to chase and stuff. But I would try to like do the 3 steps, like look around, take my 5 minutes almost, and just like do nothing, and then take 3 more steps.
Well, they say that if you walk with a dog, that it makes a pattern, like a man makes. You know, he's got 2 legs, and all of a sudden you've got 6 legs going, and that's similar to the deer. I mean, it depends on what kind of a dog you've got.
Yeah.
But sometimes that'll work.
This one was deer hungry. If I let it off the leash, it would have just chased him down.
Most are, really.
Yeah.
So do you have, I know you're not, like you said, you're not necessarily a trophy hunter, but do you have a story based on the best deer hunt or the best like tussle you've had with a deer? Or
Well, the biggest deer I ever shot was about a 15-minute hunt, although I chased him for 3 years. So it was the longest hunt. It was the shortest hunt. No, every encounter is different. Last year it was 3 seconds, and this year it was 2 seconds. So I have a stand in a good place, and last year I saw the movement. I turned and waited, and got the opportunity, and this year I had the gun right in my hand, saw the movement, and put it up, and bang. So it was that fast. And they say that the average length of time that a buck will present himself is 8 seconds. Now, I don't know where that number comes from, but everybody, you say it enough, it becomes the truth, right? And I've seen on my trail camera this year, before I got my buck, there was a buck came out in front of my stand, crossed the trail, circled, came back across the trail, stood on the trail, circled back around, and then went up the trail towards my stand. All in all, those pictures from first to the last was 2.5 minutes. So you don't normally get a gift like that.
Yeah.
And there was nobody in the tree when that happened. So sometimes you have to stay alert. I mean, sometimes you have a deer and you wait for it, and sometimes you get the opportunity, sometimes you don't. And sometimes it's just split second.
Oh, I've noticed that the most. Like, it just seems like you're sitting there, and then boom, there he is. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, he's right there.
Yeah.
And stealthy through the woods. The deer I shot last year, I'm hunting on the edge of a chopping.
Yeah.
And across from me is kind of where I would suppose is one of their higher frequency bedding areas. So I was getting lots of morning and night, and lots of mornings especially. So I was like, oh, I'll go this evening, even though I see the most action in the morning at this stand. So I went in, and I was sitting there, and it was prime time, whatever they call that, the 15 minutes before dark kind of thing. And I'm sitting there, and he had traveled 100 yards through the chopping without me even noticing. Yeah. And I was like, you're just scanning. Always, you're looking. And all of a sudden, he was like 20 yards from my bait, and it was like, oh. Like,
yeah.
Like, I better get ready here. Like, and it was the biggest deer I shot, so it was so nerve-wracking and everything. But there's nothing, I find, like, the process of shooting it is the fastest thing ever. It feels like once it's over, it was like there was a deer. Like, it feels so fast. It feels so, and you're so, like, upbeat. Like, I don't know, every time I shoot a deer after, I'm always so, like, giddy and like almost in tears in a way, you know what I mean? Just shaking. It doesn't change since I've been fortunate enough to shoot 4 bucks now.
Good.
And every time it's the same. Whether the size of it is different, it's the same feeling. It's definitely the same feeling.
Yeah. Just a little note. A lot of hunters think that the best time to hunt is first thing in the morning, last thing at night. And if the only time you go out is last thing at night, first thing in the morning, then that reinforces your belief. But I did a lot of study on deer patterns and the moon. And on the full moon and the new moon, the bucks will be out right at high noon in the middle of the day.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So if it's right on the new moon or right on the full moon or the day before or after, go out hunting around between 11 and 1, and
you'll have a good chance.
Well, you'll have a good chance.
Huh. Well,
yeah.
Guess I'll take that into next season. No, it's just I usually hunt morning and evening for the reason that I usually work in the middle of the day. Yeah. So if you're able to get a couple hours off in the morning, or you know what I mean, come in a bit late or whatever, it makes it a bit easier. But this year it was really different because it was my first time hunting in the woods in a t-shirt. So
it was warm.
I couldn't believe it. I was lucky enough the day I shot my deer was warm, but it dropped the next day.
Yeah.
So it was nice for hanging weather, but it was crazy. I was sitting there thinking, what am I doing? Like, I've never hunted in a t-shirt.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I've seen it snow on the first day. In fact, I've seen it snow heavy on the first day. So, yeah.
It's crazy. So what inspired you to write the book?
Well,
just the passing of knowledge, or
somewhere, and I brought my graph. I didn't know there was a camera, but I brought my graph.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's fine. So that was the number of licenses sold in 1982.
Okay.
That's the number of licenses sold in 2021. So somewhere in here, which was 1982, there was a thing in the paper, which I didn't know, but the thing in the paper that said that deer license sales were down to 60% of what they had been 10 years before. And that shocked me. I was disturbed by that, that the culture that I had known was disappearing, which is why, if it kept on that pattern, I'd be the last one hunting, which is why the name of the book. So that was in 1982.
Wow.
And in 2013, so that's like 30 years, is that right? 80, 90, yeah. I just kept a file, and whenever I got an idea, I'd write it on a piece of paper and just throw it in the file. Never did anything with it. And when I retired, I started writing. And I had a skeletal outline of what I wanted the book to be, and that kind of changed. And some things that were going to be a chapter ended up being a whole section. But I wrote for 3 or 4 years, and then I published the book. And my wife asked me, she said, how can you remember all this stuff? And the more I wrote, the more I remembered. So that was the impetus for it, yeah.
That's awesome.
You tap into the memory box. So you're the last deer hunter, technically.
Well, I'm part of the culture of the last deer hunters. So
Yeah. The last deer, right. You explained it perfectly. What are some core traditional things you need to do as a hunter? Do you think that all hunters should abide by? Just in general information, general tactics, general everything, I guess.
Well, I said I've never shot a doe, and that's a personal ethic. That's a choice because that was what my father did. But I don't hold it against anyone that does shoot does. All hunters are different, and all hunters have a different ethic, but they all have an ethic. So I don't use bait, but I don't have a problem with people that use bait. I have a very good friend who uses bait, swears by it, and always gets a nice deer. I don't, but I have always hunted legally. I've always hunted during legal time. I've never shot a deer out of season or out of the proper time or illegally. I've been tempted. I've fired at a couple when I shouldn't, but I missed them, so I figured that was probably just.
An omen, yeah.
Yeah. So, no, a lot of who a hunter is whoever has influenced him. So if you grew up in a hunting family, then that's going to be it. If your family didn't hunt and you've got friends that hunt, that's going to be it. If you choose to hunt driving the roads and you get your deer in a chopping somewhere, that's fine. I knew a guy, he's passed now, but he used to just, his legs weren't great. He used to just drive his truck around, and he always got a big, came to my house one day with a big buck on the back and to show me, and he told me where he got it, and he says, I got one the same as this one about 10 years ago in the same place. So that's fine. I mean, if people do that, that's fine. If people want to sit in a stand, that's fine. If people want to bait, that's fine. If they want to stalk to the woods, that's fine too. A lot of that choice depends upon what access you have to a hunting area.
Yeah.
So the first part of the hunt is to find a place to hunt.
Yeah.
And, if you have a family farm, then you're going to hunt on the family farm. Maybe the deer are somewhere else, but you're going to hunt on your family farm.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time looking for places to hunt, and I hunted at one place for, I guess, probably 30 years, 25 or 30 years, and took a lot of bucks off that hill, and I was the only one up there. And the price of admission was I had to walk a mile up a hill, steep incline, to get to where my stands were. but I don't like being crowded in the woods. I don't like seeing other orange jackets. And I was very fortunate to get the farmer that owned that property, who didn't hunt. I was very thankful to get his permission. Nothing stays the same. That property, if you look at it today and looked at it 30 years ago, it's totally different.
Yeah.
You know, what used to be a field is all grown up. What used to be adjoining woods is all now clear cut. So it's totally different. But I found another place that, there was kind of a crossover there, but I found another place that strategically I've put a stand in what they refer to as a funnel.
Okay.
Where the deer tend to go through. It's not a place the deer go to, it's a place where the deer go through.
Oh, okay.
And if you jump a buck on the way in, doesn't matter. It's like a bus. There's another one coming by. And most of the bucks that I get on my cameras are only one-timers. They come through and they're going somewhere else. They don't come back. So if you disturb a deer, you don't have to worry about him remembering that you're there, because the next one that comes isn't going to be him.
Right. Right. Do you think the bigger, more mature deer are the ones that do that? Like, I feel like the smaller, like, bucks, obviously, I don't know, maybe just hang more with other deer and follow other deer, where the bigger bucks don't really. Do you know what I mean?
Deer are like people. Some are gregarious and social, and some are loners.
Yeah.
Half an hour before I came here this morning, there's a deer, a solitary deer, on my lawn. And I got another 5 or 6 that come by most of the time. And I got another few that come by once in a while. This deer is always alone, always by itself. I know a guy not too far from here, who, like late at night, like 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, the truck ahead of him hit a deer, and the truck just kept going. So he pulled over, and the deer was dead in the ditch. Monster rack. And he took the head, threw it in the back of his truck, and he had it mounted. And a beautiful deer, beautiful mount. Nobody in that area, in that community, had ever seen that deer.
I believe that, yeah.
And that deer was, mature, maybe 10, maybe 12 years old. A very large buck, very large rack. Nobody had ever seen it. And there's other deer that someone will shoot and say, oh yeah, I remember that one. Well, that's the one that used to be down in the meadow. So
yeah.
I think it's hard to make. You can make generalities about does, but I don't think you can make generalities about bucks.
Okay. I know for a fact that, like, in our little hunting group, which consists of my cousins and my father, the biggest deer we've ever shot, we've never had on camera before that day.
Yeah.
And the biggest deer that we've shot were also on the move. Like they weren't coming here to go to our bait pile. They were just by chance walking through, and if you're not there, you're not going to see them, kind of thing. And it seems like the ones that were the most consistently hunting always has had a chance at a massive buck for that reason, because it's not even that they're going to pass your camera. You know what I mean? They'll just keep going. And I know the biggest one that was shot off our farm or whatever, he was just moseying through the field, trying to get to the other side, like knew he didn't feel right being out in the open, kind of thing. So I definitely agree with, like...
Well, the biggest one that I ever shot, and I had it mounted, that was my Christmas present that year, but he was coming with the wind, and it was right at daybreak. And he broke all the rules.
Yeah.
He was going somewhere in a hurry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you be interested for me to read a poem I wrote?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I had one in the book. I do write a lot of poetry, but I brought this just in case. But you asked this, and this will probably describe the answer to what you just asked. The poem is called That Old Buck. The tracks across the forest floor soon fade, a slight delay, eroded by the wet and wind and nature's interplay, descending mottled spectrum from diminishing display, erasing any evidence the buck has been this way. Now deer are deer, the kids and does, the hunters always say. Their trails repeated year to year quite openly betray the secret to their movements, seasons, reasons, night and day. To perceptive predators who wait, they are their food, their prey. But that old buck, his head expands, magnificent array. Its contents, knowledge, cunning, call it what you may. No hunter's skill can track him down, he always slips away. He's managed living safe thus far, intends to safely stay. His pattern is no pattern, no track, no trail, no stray. He's master of his destiny, his role, his scene, his play.
That was amazing.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
That was really good.
I'm not gonna lie, Robert. I've never once heard a poem and like thoroughly, like I know I've read that because it's in the book.
No, there's another one in the book.
There's a different one in the book. Okay. Yeah, I've never heard a poem that I actually was like into it, but I was literally like, I was like imagining if I was the buck, like that was just like alone and just like trekking on my own duty and like nobody knew I was around, I guess. Yeah, that was really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Do you know why certain bucks, like, do you have a rough guess or I guess why certain bucks would not deal with the like a normal behavior, I guess, of a deer? Like they're on a mission to what or doing what?
Well, it's again, they're like people. I mean, I know people that could fall into a trap, and there's you see on the TV about especially elderly people like me falling for scams, right? And then there's other people that don't trust anybody, and we all know them. And people aren't the same. It's the same with deer. And I think that if a buck, when he was young, witnessed something or experienced something, that would probably influence him to be a loner and nocturnal and not go around in the daytime.
Totally. I'm sure this book has inspired a lot of hunters. I know it's inspired him. Yeah, ever since he started kind of reading it, he kind of like has been nitpicking at me and stuff. And so he did buy a bow and stuff like that. He wants to hunt with a bow. But I think it's totally awesome that like that's probably the intent of this book in a way, is for people to read and learn and be able to apply that knowledge in the field. And I think I'm so excited to read it. Like I'm pumped now. So. But no, it's probably feels so good to push that on to the younger generation too.
Well, I have 3 daughters. One hunts with me. It's been 10 years. She lives in Halifax. She called me this year and she said, what do I have to do to come home and hunt with you? So she jumped through she jumped through the hoops. We did everything legally. I'm a licensed guide. I took her out.
Welcome. This episode is sponsored by Piccadilly Coffee. Piccadilly Coffee has a passion for all things coffee, from bean to cup and everything in between. Sourcing beans from a small farm and cooperatives is a main priority. They also don't use technology and large machines to roast their coffee. They use sight, smell, and sound to ensure that each batch has the best flavor profile. Piccadilly Coffee also roasts in small batches, so their customers are always guaranteed fresh beans. Their mission is to provide the best quality product as well as the best customer service, all while enjoying the Piccadilly Coffee experience. Guys, I'm pretty sure like coffee is one of the most purchased items in the world. So if you're human and you buy coffee, just shop at Piccadilly Coffee. Support them. They're amazing. Matter of fact, I don't even like coffee, but ever since I started with them, I've started my addiction. So get at it.
So anyway, she came home. She didn't shoot a deer, but she had action. In the morning, she had 5 deer come by and slowly and hung around, and she got pretty excited about that. In the afternoon, she had 3 partridge come by, and she took pictures of them. They were directly underneath the tree. So, and then there was another doe came by the afternoon, and then 2 more when we were leaving. So, yeah. So she's pumped, and she'll be back next year. And but I have 8 grandchildren. The 2 oldest boys have never taken a course. They've been to the range with me. I've had them fishing. They know how to shoot. And they have good intentions, but you know what they say about the road to hell, right? So there's a very real possibility that none of my grandchildren will ever hunt. And that's fine. That's their choice.
Yeah.
I'm glad that came full circle, because I was going to ask you, why do you think it's a decrease in licensing and like the whole sport in general? Like, I know that land is getting more scarce as the years go on for deer to live, but I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know all the factors that.
Well, probably the main one is that New Brunswick, although it's a rural province, is becoming more urbanized. There's less people living on the farm, and now they're living in the cities. The people that grew up on the farm are now moving out to Alberta or Toronto or wherever. So the percentage of urban-rural, the distribution, is going more urban. Not that people in the cities don't hunt, but people that have grown up, this new generation, that their parents grew up on a farm, but now they're growing up in a city, they're less exposed to that culture. Also, I think, when I was in school, I played hockey, but my 3 oldest grandkids, or 4 oldest grandkids, they play hockey and they play soccer and whatever. Organized sports involves evenings, weekends. They just aren't available to go for a hunt with their grandfather.
Yeah. No. I definitely seen a decrease just in like how busy people's lives are. Like, I grew up always around like my cousins who were always 5 years or more older than me. So I was just itching at the wheel to get going, start hunting and stuff. And it was like a community almost. Like, someone got their deer, we'd all come out, we'd all, like, it would be a bunch of congratulations, it would be an event at that point. It would be fun. It would, like, and then it, like, as years went on, they started having kids and their lives got a lot more busy with different things. And when I started hunting, it was just me and my dad. Like, it kind of like faded away.
Yeah.
And it's not because they didn't lose the passion for hunting. It's just their priorities changed. And I feel like today, like, that stuff gets lost a lot more.
Well,
like, what we do.
That's part of the intrigue of being a hunter, is the community of hunters.
Yeah.
And the camaraderie and being at the camp and whatever. And that can get disrupted if one of the guys disappears.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we used to go duck hunting up on the St. John River outside of Hampstead. And there was a group of us, my brother and my nephew and a bunch of guys from up there. And there was always a guy from Montana and another guy from Toronto. And that's why, I always kept my guide license so I could guide the out-of-province duck hunter.
Yeah.
And we had a wonderful time. And every year we looked forward to it. And then one of the guys died, which was very sad. He had a very promising career, and he died. And it wasn't the same. And the next year, only half the guys showed up. The year after that, I think we were the ones that showed up. And then I haven't had it since. Because the group dynamic had changed. Not that he was the most important guy in the group, but he was important to maintaining the group. The group wasn't the group without him.
Yeah. No, totally. There was kind of like a missing piece, I'd say, when I shot my first deer and they weren't around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, like, I can just remember being in the garage, it being 10 o'clock, Mom would be at me, you got to go to bed, you got school in the morning, like, it's just a deer. And I'd be like, come on, Mom, like, we haven't weighed it yet, or whatever. We would always guess on weights, the old Coleman stove in the garage would get heated up, and there'd be a slice on there, and just of the meat, and, just talking about the hunt and what happened, and you learn so much, like, me on the back of the four-wheeler going out there, you know what I mean, seeing this stuff when I was young. And then, like, I know especially, like, when I'm older, if I have kids, like, I'm going to not push it on my kids, but make sure that they see that too, because it's an awesome skill and it's an awesome potential to learn, and you gain a lot out of it except hunting. I truly believe that.
Yeah. Well, I think the main reason, one of the main reasons I wrote the book was so that my grandchildren would know what I had done. And if I wasn't able to share it with them physically in the woods, I was able to share it with them with the book.
Robert, you actually inspired me more for writing my own book. So nobody knows, like, but I'm slowly writing a book, and it's almost just like a life thing, just slowly write it over time, and hopefully by the time I'm your age, I can have something to be able to put out. And throughout my whole life, and just slowly write, kind of throughout like maybe 3 months, kind of recap what I did those 3 months, and just continue to do that. And hopefully by 70, I have a stack like this to go through and get it all edited.
It's addictive. It's addictive. I'm, I still write, so I can't really say that I'm purposely trying to write another book, but I've got a good start on a few chapters. And it's not the same as this. It would be in a similar vein, but it would be totally different.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're not talking about hunting right now, but I thoroughly enjoy writing, and it takes some time to get into it, especially me growing up with a screen in my face all the time. Like, it's hard to get on a piece of paper sometimes and just like kind of thoughts go away and just write on the pen, I guess. But it's thoroughly enjoyable every time I get onto it, and I think it's something people need to do more, but it's hard to put the time in and like actually put the skill into it for a few minutes and just like try to hone down. Well,
the beauty of using a word processor is that you don't have to start from page 1. You can, and that's, I work on chapter 13, and then I get tired of it, and I work on chapter 25, and then once you have it written, then you can go back and tweak it. You can say, well, I've used that same word 14 times in the same page. I got to start using different words, right? And then you can tweak and you can embellish, and you can make connections between one chapter and another one.
Yeah. You should write a book.
I don't have anything to write about. I need a lot more years of deer experience to write a book like that.
Well, there's a guy in Nova Scotia by the name of John Hawkins. He's much older than me. And Jack Hawkins, for the people that know him. He wrote a book when I was, I guess, in my 20s, early 20s. It was called Deer Hunting in Eastern Canada. Small book, but it was at that time, if anyone ever to ask me what they needed to read to know what to do to be a hunter, that was the book. And I've met him. I discovered that a very good friend of mine knew him as well, but I spent a few hours with him one day and reminiscing and talking about stuff, and I thanked him on behalf of myself and all my fellow hunters for the influence that he had on us, and he appreciated that. There is a copy in the Sussex Library.
Really?
Called Deer Hunting in Eastern Canada, John Hawkins.
I'll definitely check it out. Yeah. You're a verified RCMP ammunition?
Well, I'm a firearms verifier. Okay, so that's a bunch of silliness that happened back when they came out with a law that you had to register all your firearms. And to register a firearm, you couldn't just say, well, it's a 303. I mean, you had to say it was this model and this make and this mark, and it was manufactured by Long Branch in Canada or by Ishapur in India or wherever, right? So in order to register your gun, you needed to go to a verifier who would verify what it was so you could put that on the registration. It was a bunch of silliness. So when they changed the law that you didn't have to have your guns registered anymore, it became kind of moot. But I occasionally get a call from somebody who will say, I have a gun here, I need to verify, and I can do that. I just sign a paper, and I've got a number, and that's it.
Interesting. Now, aren't they trying to pass a law now about the semi-automatics center fires?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I would rather not get into a whole lot of politics.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw it coming.
Yeah.
And they were beating all around it. You know, they were arbitrarily, banning this gun and this type of a gun. And the common denominator was that they were all semi-automatics. But there's a law in the books right now that you can't have a magazine for a semi-automatic that holds more than 5 rounds.
Yeah.
That should be enough to cover it.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's a lot of silliness, and I would expect that at some point another government will probably change some of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then, by the same token, and I was surprised at this because when they brought in the gun registry back years ago, a fellow who I knew, who was a great hunter, he was a trapper, he took a month off every fall and trapped, and he showed me his receipts, so he did pretty well trapping. And I mentioned something about semi-automatics. He says, who needs that amount of firepower to shoot a deer? Typically, I only fire one shot. But I do know a lot of people that I've known over the years that are friends of mine, people that I've hunted with, that have a semi-automatic. That's their favorite gun. That's what they always wanted. The 742 Woodsmaster, as an example. It's not. It's going to be outlawed, and it's a very, very common firearm for hunters to use. And I think that if a hunter has shot a couple dozen deer with his Remington 742 Woodsmaster, he's not going to give it up.
No.
Regardless of what the law is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So what caliber and what model of gun is your deer rifle? Like, there's always one in the cabinet that's...
There is one. I have several firearms. I have a few that I never use. They were given to me, passed on to me, and I'll be passing them on to somebody else. I have my grandfather's 1873 model Winchester 4440, the gun that quote unquote won the West. But and I've got a really nice Weatherby 30-06 with a Leopold scope on it that just sits there in the cabinet because it's kind of like my backup gun that I never need. No, I have a 303 Lee Enfield. It's a Parker Hale rebuild that I've probably shot 90% of the deer I've shot over my career have been shot with a 303.
That's awesome. My dad also hunts solely with his 303 Enfield, so I was kind of lucky when it was my time to start hunting. I didn't have a rifle, and my cousin had inherited a lot of rifles through his grandparents because both of his grandfathers passed on, and he was the only grandson on both sides that hunted. So he got those guns, so I got gifted a lever action 308 why can't I remember what it is? I want to say it's a Winchester 308.
Or a Browning?
No, it's quite old.
Yeah.
It's It's my favorite thing. Like I've often thought of like,
is it a Savage 99?
Yes, it's a Savage 99. That's right.
Yeah,
That's
that's
exactly
a very
what it is.
common gun.
Yeah, and it's done me so well. I've never had an issue with it, and I've like Dad was like, "Oh, do you think you ever go get something different?" I was like, "Why would I?" Like,
Well, that's
like this has done all I want. It's been gifted to me. It has meaning more than just the gun. You know what I mean? Every time I get a deer, like, it almost feels like I'm adding to someone else's tally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
I'm carrying on that legacy almost in a way. Like, even though they're not necessarily my my relatives, but it was my cousin relatives, and he thought that I should get that gun. So it means more to me than just a rifle, right? Like,
it's got a history that's older than your history.
Exactly. Yeah. Which means so much. Like, I don't even want to go get a different caliber or a different gun for hunting, because it would be all I'd ever need, really. But other than that, like, do you hunt other than deer? Like, do you go partridge hunting or?
Well, like I say, I used
anything?
to do a lot of duck hunting.
Yeah.
But no, I hunt partridge. I used to hunt rabbits, but there's not too many rabbits around. Just partridge mainly. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish there was many rabbits as there once was. My dad used to tell me stories. He would cross the road, and it was a great big alder patch, and it'd be nothing to go shoot 30 and sell them to the fox farmers.
Yeah.
He said you'd shoot one, and another one would jump on you. Yeah. You turn around, and you would end up getting that one, and you'd look around, and there'd be another one.
Well, we used to, when I was a kid, we used to snare them and take them into the St. John City Market, and they'd pay us whatever, 50 cents a pair cleaned, or 25 cents a pair not cleaned, and then they'd double the price and sell them in the market. I mean, that wouldn't be legal today, but
no.
Yeah.
Imagine seeing a case of rabbits just like available.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Like, Dad said he made quite a few dollars doing it that way.
Yeah.
Do you hunt coyotes?
I don't hunt coyotes, but they're collateral damage for when I'm hunting deer.
Yeah.
I've shot an awful lot of coyotes over the years.
Really?
In fact, the morning that I shot my buck this year, about 45 minutes before the buck came through, in the other direction, I saw a doe going. I looked around, saw movement behind her, thought it would be another one or maybe a buck, and there were 4 coyotes on her tail.
Wow.
And I would have dropped 1 or 2 if I could have, but I didn't have a clean shot. So
yeah.
I had 8 come by one day. I got 2 of the 8, and I was using a single shot rifle.
Really?
Yeah.
That's impressive. I've never had the chance, but obviously I'm the same way as you. I don't go out to hunt for coyotes, but if I would see one, I would obviously get rid of it. But the day after I had bagged my deer, I just gutted him not too far away. So I knew that it was potential I'd get them on camera, because they would obviously smell that and hear the crows and follow their pattern. But I ended up having a deer this year with fibroma. Have you ever heard of fibroma? It's a wart on the deer.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
So this one was from his chin all the way down to his legs.
Really?
And it hung. And you don't see too often a deer with a bent neck.
Yeah.
And it was bad. And I was worried of him fighting or getting in the rut and spreading that, because the only way of it spreading, by what I did my research, is from contact with another deer.
Yeah.
And it was bad. And I ended up getting a picture on my trail cam of a coyote and him staring at each other only 10 feet away.
Really?
Yeah. And I had probably 8 consecutive pictures of him high alert in different positions. So I'm guessing they surrounded him or something, but it must have been wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. But I hadn't seen it in person, but apparently it was really bad. A couple of the other people that hunted in the area said when he would run, it would be like a gallop, and it would hit him in the head. It was really rough. And I was actually kind of, I wouldn't say, I definitely disagreed with, I contacted the rangers and stuff, and I was like, what do you guys do in this situation? They're like, oh, there's nothing we can do. It was like, it's like blah, blah, blah. I was like, so if I see it and I put it out of its misery at this point, is there anything, can I get my tag back and you guys take it for your research and kind of thing? And they're like, nope, that's your tag deer and blah, 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 all this and all that. And I was like, okay, like.
Well, they say that the law is a fool, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of, typically when I shoot a deer, I'll put one of my cameras on the guts and usually all I see is crows. So this year, the morning after I got my buck, the camera showed a bunch of crows, a few hawks, a couple eagles. But there, at 10:30 in the morning, walking towards the guts, was a smaller buck, but with bigger antlers, a nice big 10-pointer, standing there looking at the crows. So you never know, right?
Oh, yeah. We've also had, Dad had one year, had dropped one and right at the bait. And Dad said, well, I only get one deer a year, so I'm not going to drag it off. Like, I'm just going to put it here. And he had, like, does and fawns eating the apples around.
Yeah.
Not even bothered. And like you said, there's the odd crow and stuff in the picture there with them. But those does and fawns didn't give a crap that they were there. It's kind of odd. Some people often say that, like, you got to take them far away and do it. But I think it is and it isn't. I think every deer is different, would react different to it. But
And I don't know what the answer is to this, but I know the crows will take, a deer that's dead in the woods. But I've shot coyotes and left them, and the crows haven't touched them.
Wonder what the reasoning is behind that.
And I opened one up one time and put it on a stump on its back, so it was exposed, and no crows came to it. Couldn't figure out why. Don't know. Mystery.
Did you get anything on it except crows?
Didn't get any crows, no.
No, I didn't get anything.
Anything,
No.
period. Wow.
Yeah.
What time of the year was it?
Hunting season.
Odd. Do you think they would eat their own? Do you think if a pack came, stumbled upon them?
I don't know.
It wouldn't.
I don't know. I know that wolves will take the cubs from other wolves. And these coyotes we have are half wolf, half coyote, whatever. So I don't know. That one might, another one might not. I don't know.
Huh. Yeah. Be kind of weird, honestly. If you had pictures of a coyote and a coyote, it'd be kind of gut-wrenching in a way. No, have you ever hunted bears or anything?
I've never hunted bear. I've never shot a bear. I've dressed a couple for people that had. I see a lot of bears.
Just not interested as much, or don't enjoy eating it, or
I've had bear meat, and a nice roast is kind of like pork. A nice bear roast is nice for a treat, but I don't want to fill my freezer full of bear meat.
Yeah, my dad wasn't far from a dump when he grew up.
Yeah.
And back then, you just dumped your garbage. Everybody came to this dump and dumped their garbage. It wasn't like a spot in town that's all fenced. It wasn't like that. And Dad said they would used to, if they ever had to go in the nighttime, if they put the lights up, there'd be 3 or 4 of them just chowing on dirty diapers or whatever. And Dad said, I will not shoot a bear because you don't know what they're eating. Could be a blueberry bear, or it could be a bear that's just living off the neighbor's garbage. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a friend that bow hunts a bear every year and a deer every year, and he has no problem with it. He thinks it's delicious. And my mother always said like beer tastes gamey, but I was like, well, it's just a different type of meat, to be honest. But
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be the thing. I mean, if I did like bear meat, then I'm sure that my wife and my grandkids wouldn't eat it. So, it'd be not the same as the deer.
No, totally.
So to change the subject a little bit, there's a kind of a little bit of a spooky story in your book of the Fun Day girl ghost, or
from Martin Head.
From Martin Head, yeah. I don't know if you want to get in detail with that, or
tell that story.
Well,
Tell that story.
It's in my book. Let somebody buy my book and read it.
True. I am
but
going to shout this out at the end of the podcast. So.
It's a great story to tell around the campfire when you're at Martin Head with your grandkids. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
They love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would like some people listening to this to actually go there and see if they could spot something. Have I told you about it?
No, I haven't heard it. I guess I'll have to read
Yeah,
about it.
you are gonna have to read it. Might be in your Christmas gift this year.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was kind of spooky, but super cool at the same time. Did you feed a guy with mushrooms on a dozer, like just random mushrooms?
Yeah.
I was reading that.
Well,
I was like,
I won't say that I did. We did. Somebody did. Yeah.
yeah, they just found random mushrooms and then they just fed it to the dozer guy, and I was like,
Well, I think sometimes you embellish these stories. I think he knew what they were, and
okay.
But once we found out that they were okay, then we ate them all summer. So yeah.
Yeah,
That's definitely something I don't just randomly pick up in the woods and eat.
I'd be scared.
Other than I've seen chanterelles in the woods.
Yeah.
And you know by if they're orange in the center are orange, then they're true chanterelles. So I've seen those. I've never eaten them, but I would have felt comfortable eating them because I just understand those. But other than that, I don't know. I wouldn't be touching any weird fungus out in the woods.
No.
There's big talk on eating like raw meat. Do you think you could eat like a deer raw, or would that be different compared to like a beef patty or something?
Well, I mean, there's whole cultures that eat raw meat and raw fish. I mean, you eat raw fish, it's not raw fish, it's sushi, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll eat clams raw and I'll eat scallops raw and whatever. And yeah, I mean, I have sliced a thin piece off of a deer and tasted it, but I prefer to have it cooked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
with potatoes and carrots.
And carrots.
What's your favorite deer meal? I'm sure that's probably somewhere in this book too.
Yeah, he has a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. What's your favorite?
Well, I always take, and it's easy for the butcher because the butcher, saves them a lot of cutting. I always take one hip whole for Christmas dinner and the other hip cut in two for 2 other roasts. So that's been our tradition, roast of venison for Christmas. And my wife loves it, my daughters love it, my grandkids love it. So,
have you ever been on like a different venison hunt, like caribou or elk or?
No, I mean I've been on a few moose hunts.
Yeah.
I've eaten caribou.
Yeah.
And I've had bison.
Okay.
But not a lot. But I've eaten a lot of moose meat and deer meat over the years. Yeah.
Did you enjoy the caribou?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Moose is better than deer, and caribou is better than moose. That's according to my wife.
I agree.
My
elk is better than caribou. No.
My dream hunt would be a caribou or an elk hunt. I don't know where.
They're huge.
But I would just love to hear the bugle and be in the moment. And I truly think I'd like to train for a couple years and backpack it too. It's a one in a lifetime kind of thing, and it's a lot of work. Like you're up and down mountains miles at a time. You're scouting. It's a true hunt is what I would consider.
I've always wondered about that because you've got the pack and the horse and the gun and you go for miles and then you come back and someone says, well, where you left the road with the horse, there was a herd of elk there the next day. So I've always been of the adage that I would rather wait for the animal than chase the animal. But it's part of the mystique of hunting elk, right?
Yeah, it truly is. But I've watched thousands of videos of bugles, and I just couldn't imagine what it would be like in person. It would be shake, right up the spine.
In a part of your book, you talk about after shooting the deer, to sit back and kind of reflect on the deer, and don't rush into going to get your deer. Almost, I don't know the headspace that you kind of get into, but as soon as you shoot your deer, you say kind of memorize the deer, I guess. Is that right?
Well, there's two things about that. One is when you shoot a deer, usually they'll run. And if you're in the woods, you have that one shot, it runs, I always have a cup of tea. Wait 15 minutes, and then you go and you find your deer, whatever, 30 or 40 yards away. The problem with shooting one in a field is you fire at it and it runs, you just keep firing, right?
Yeah.
So, which is it's just human nature, I guess, to do that. But once you have the deer down, I think it's important to respect the animal, and to take a moment and be thankful. And my daughter, who came home to hunt with me this year, she spent a lot of time working with an Aboriginal organization. So she has her eagle feather and her sweetgrass, and does the smudge and all that. So, and I was gifted an eagle feather, and I did the proper smudge and the whole thing with that. So I've got that framed on my cabin wall.
No, it's something I was always taught, that you take a true minute before doing anything to the animal to truly appreciate its beauty and appreciate its life and what it's gonna do for you. It's never get there, we need to cut it up and get out. It's okay. Before the hard work begins of getting it out and processing it and all that, is to thank the animal. It's always been that way. Yeah.
I mean, there's many variations on that, but
yeah. No, for sure.
And hunting has kind of almost a negative. What is that? Like a negative feel to it, like conversation, I guess, when people don't realize what hunting really is about.
Yeah.
I think it's just perspective in that sense, but.
Well, that's I think part of the situation is that there is a political effort out there to have people stop eating meat, period. I think we should be all free to make our own dietary choices, right? Sure. I always am amazed and pleased when I find a writer or hear about a person who has never been part of the hunting culture, who, for whatever personal reason, chooses to take up hunting.
Yeah.
And because when they talk about what they do and why they do it and how they do it, it's totally fresh. You could say, well, I grew up in a hunting culture and I do things this way because my father did, my grandfather did, and so on. Yeah. But the people that have never done it and choose to for whatever reason,
start fresh.
It's very refreshing to hear their version of the experience.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to know my reason?
I do.
My main reason is, how long can we live in convenience? That's my main reason. To be able to go to the grocery store, I don't think is going to be around forever. So if I have to be self-sufficient at some point in my life, ever,
you're ready.
I'm ready. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got rampant inflation again.
Yeah.
I got 155 pounds of meat off my buck. So what does beef go for? $5 a pound or something?
Yeah.
$20 a pound for the better cuts. And that's a good investment.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's always like, how long can we live with convenience? That's all I kind of wonder. And we were talking about, me and Jake here, we're talking about doing our own meat and like learning how to do that soon.
Yeah.
Try to learn how to take our meat and kind of do it ourselves and
make our own sausage or whatever we want.
The most important part, I've never processed my own deer. I could. I know exactly how to do it, but I could, but I never have, because I always take it to the butcher. I usually skin it and then take it to the butcher. But the most important part of the process is having the deer hung in a controlled environment for 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever it is, depending upon the
Absolutely.
size. And if, you're like certain people that have a freezer or a cooler, then that's
totally
fine.
possible.
But if someone like me that doesn't, then it goes to the butcher.
No, we back in the like I don't know, even 3 or 4 years ago when it was cold enough temperature, if you had an area to close your windows off in your garage and let it hang, we would definitely do it. But since then, I just don't. Like, I don't trust a 5-degree weather day or anything
No.
like that. It's a difficult. I mean, you invested so much time and effort into this deer, and you don't want it to go to waste. You
No.
took something's life for
And
it,
especially a year like this year where it was exceptionally warm, right?
Yeah.
But I can remember years ago having people, talk about having a nice big buck and then losing it
Yeah.
because it spoiled.
Oh yeah, I've heard people's freezers breaking too,
Yeah.
and then it spoils, and then they just open the door, and it's like woof, the smell and like full moose, and
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. That'd be gut wrenching, but totally.
Well, we've been about an hour and 15 minutes probably, Robert. So, are you good to put an end to it?
I'm good. My wife is waiting down at the gym, so I better go.
Yeah, perfect. Robert Feltus, everybody. He has a book called The Last Deer Hunter. It is on, I don't know if they can see that. It is on Amazon, right?
Yes.
And can they purchase it anywhere else?
At Moffat's.
At Moffat's.
Yeah.
So if you're in Sussex, New Brunswick, you can purchase that at Moffat's Hardware Store. They're a local store. Look up Sully's Ice Cream Parlor, and it's right across from there. So, yeah. The Last Deer Hunter, everybody. Robert Feltus, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Well, that's it, Robert.